الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. So tonight inshallah we're going to mention the masail connected to basically speaking in salah. Speaking in salah, and then to complete the additional things you articulate in salah will be things that resemble speaking in salah over the next 1 or 2 lectures inshallah. So now speaking in salah is our category 2 of increasing something you articulate in salah. So we finished increasing something you articulate from the adhkar of salah in salah, which was what we mentioned in the previous lectures. So we ended off with speaking about a person doing salam in the wrong place, thinking that the salah was over, but the person missed out a rak'ah plus. And we also mentioned that the same rule would apply in certain cases to when a person does the salam with no rak'at left, but certain pillars or wajibat of salah left, specifically pillars, like he did not do the tashahhud or salah and salam on the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then similar rules would apply. Amongst those similar rules are these ones that we're going to mention. And now we're speaking about speaking in salah. So speaking in salah has 2 situations. Number 1, a person speaks in salah while he is actually in salah. Speaking in salah has 2 situations. Number 1, it's to speak while a person is actually in salah. While he is actually in a posture of salah, in qiyam or ruku' or sujood or sitting, he actually speaks in salah. That's number 1. Number 2, a person speaks while he is technically in salah, or while he is in reality still in salah. However we want to phrase it, the result is one. What does that mean? That means a person does the salam when he's got a rak'ah plus left, thinking the salah is over. And then in this period before he remembers that he missed a rak'ah plus and he needs to go back to complete it, in this time period he speaks. And we mentioned in the previous lessons of the example of like a square. So this person, the salam would be done in the wrong place, but he's still in the square. Everything is happening in the square, and then this person speaks. The salam should be where the square ends off, because that's the end of the salah. But this case, this person did the salam in the wrong place. So that means this person spoke in the square, and we said the square is salah. So the person would have spoken there. So the ruling between these 2 situations resemble. So the fuqaha, here they mention first speaking in a situation where a person did salam before the end of salah. So we're going to phrase it like that just to keep it short. But before we say that, there's a certain situation, or we can say speaking in salah, if there's like 5 things connected to it, then according to ijma' the salah would be invalid. So number 1, a person speaks if he speaks intentionally in salah. So number 1, he speaks intentionally. Number 2, he speaks intentionally in salah knowing it is haram for him to speak in salah. Number 3, he speaks in salah intentionally knowing it's haram in salah, knowing he is in salah. And then also he speaks, it's not for the benefit of the salah. So for example, a person, if he is in, let's say, the situation where a person does the salam before the 2 rak'at, we gave the example, one of the example evidence, the hadith of Dhul Yadayn radiyallahu anhu, where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the Sahaba spoke, but they spoke for the benefit of the salah, discussing were there any rak'at that were short. Did Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam say the salam before time or not? They didn't have general speech. So number 4, when you speak in this case, if you spoke and this speech had nothing to do with the salah, and number 5, the speech did not occur in terms of, it was not wajib for the person to speak. So what does that mean? For example, a person is in salah and there's somebody that's about to be harmed. a person is about to be harmed, or let's say a person is about to walk into something and they get really hurt, or they might get burnt with some, let's say there's a fire or heater there and they're going into it, not seeing it, etc. And in this situation, it will be wajib on a person to speak. It will be wajib on a person to speak. But would that speaking break the salah or not? That's what we're going to discuss. So here, when we're saying a person speaks, knowing that he's in salah, and he speaks intentionally, and he knows that it is haram to speak in salah, and the speech that he does is not for the benefit of the salah, nor is it something wajib to say. So when those 5 things are found or not found, if they should not be found, then the speaking in salah will invalidate the salah according to all the ulama, according to ijma. So when we say a person speaks knowing a person speaks intentionally, means that takes out a person who speaks unintentionally. It takes out a person who speaks forgetfully. It takes out a person who speaks ignorantly, because they do not know. A person speaking intentionally, means taking out unintentional and also taking out forgetful. Somebody speaking forgetfully, or a person forgetfully and unintentionally, the same thing. So similar. Number 2, a person, if we say he speaks in knowing he is in salah, that takes out the situation where the person thinks he's out of salah, meaning in this case where salam is done before the time, the person thinks he's out of salah. So if a person knows he's in salah and then he speaks, that's number 2. So then we said number 3, knowing it is haram to speak in salah, that takes out the person who speaks not knowing it is haram in salah. Okay, so every time what we're saying, our definition or what we said is basically the rule we're laying down, and what it means, or who is left out. In each of these people there's a difference of opinion. And then number 4, the person speaks in this case, and what he says is not for the benefit of salah. That means if a person spoke for the benefit of the salah, whether it is while he's actually in salah or while he is technically in salah, but he did the salam before the time. Because here some ulama would mention that if you spoke in this case for the benefit of the salah, then the salah would not break. That's what it means. And number 5, it's not something that is wajib on the person to speak. And that takes out speech that is wajib, because some of the ulama say that if it's wajib for a person to speak, then they can speak and say what they need to say, only say what they need to say, not more than that. Then they continue with the salah. And to mention it here, just before we get to the actual place, it's because this mas'ala comes in the hadith of Dhul Yadayn, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam spoke to Abu Bakr and Umar radiyallahu anhuma. So then there it was wajib for them to reply to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So they had, the speech for them was wajib, and they spoke. And therefore, when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam confirmed that he actually did salam from 2 rak'at instead of 4, then he didn't tell them, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Umar radiallahu anhu, to restart their salah. They all built on their salah. They all just went back and continued where they left off. So here some of the ulama say, because what they spoke, Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhuma, it was wajib, and then they just built on the salah. So that would take out somebody who speaks if the speech was wajib, according to some ulama. We're going to mention the details there. So basically, that's the starting point of the mas'ala. And where speech would invalidate the salah by consensus of all the ulama. So then, excluding that, then we have a few situations that we're going to discuss now. So they mention, وإن تكلم في هذه الحالة لغير مصلحتها كقوله يا غلام اسقني بطلت صلاته لقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن صلاتنا هذه لا يصلح فيها شيء من كلام الآدميين. So here the fuqaha mention that in a case where a person did the salam, that's our first case we're speaking about, is salam done before the time. If a person spoke in this case and what he said had nothing to do with the salah, like saying to somebody, bring me my book, or where is my phone, or get me some water, etc. These kind of statements have nothing to do with the salah. If a person spoke like that, if a person spoke like that, the madhab says then the salah would be invalid. The salah would be invalid. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that the salah of ours, it's not appropriate that any speech from human speaking should occur in it. So this hadith is what they use to say that in this case, if a person spoke with something that doesn't have to do with the salah, then the salah is invalid. And they also say that in the hadith of Dhul Yadayn, they spoke in this case, but what they spoke was for the benefit of the salah. So that's our second point that we're going to come to just now. But here the speaking was, if it was not for the benefit of the salah, then the madhab says the salah is invalid. The salah is invalid. The second opinion, which is the opinion of Shaykh Taqiyuddin Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayh, him and also many of the other scholars outside the Hanbali madhab, like the Shafi'i school. Maybe towards the end of these Sajdah to Sahu, all of the chapters will mention some opinions of the other madhab, but for now, like the Shafi'i madhab for example, they also go with the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi here, and that is that here a person spoke not even thinking he's not in salah. So you cannot give him the rule of somebody being in salah. He thinks the salah is over, so that's why he spoke. He didn't speak intentionally, he thought the salah is over. And therefore they say in this case the salah would not be invalidated with the speech that has nothing to do with salah. And it links to where? It links to what we mentioned yesterday, that when a person does the salam in the wrong place, then from that time period to when he remembers that he has to complete the salah because he did salam short of the full raka'at, then in that case, if the person does something that invalidates the salah, or something in general would invalidate the salah, like too many movements or eating and drinking or any of the things we mentioned before, then the first opinion, the madhab says the salah would be invalid. They gave 3 or 4 stipulations only. And the other opinion is that these things do not break the salah. Included in that is speaking in this case that's not for the benefit of salah. That's not for the benefit of salah. That's one of the things. So then the madhab says كَكَلَامِهِ فِي صُلْبِهَا فِي صُلْبِ الصَّلَاةِ فَيَبْطُلْ بِهِ مُطْلَقًا. Okay. So now, when we say that this kalam breaks the salah, it must be kalam meaning speech, breaks the salah, it must be something that breaks the salah. You must have said something that breaks the salah. It's not something you said that resembles what we mentioned in the previous lessons that does not break the salah. So it can't be a verse of the Quran or a dhikr that resembles the adhkar of the salah, something like that. It must be something that will break the salah. It must be something that breaks the salah. So the madhab says that the rule here, that if a person were to speak when he's actually in salah, if he actually was in salah, fi sulbiha, like he was actually in salah, not when he did salam by mistake, then they say that anything that you say in this case, that's not from what we mentioned would be overlooked in previous lessons. Anything that you say, it would break the salah. It would break the salah. And they say, سواء كان إماما. They say even if the person is the imam or not the imam, even if what he said was intentional or forgetfully, even if he said it ignorantly, even if he said it through his own choice, even if he was forced to speak in salah, or even if he said something that was obligatory for him to say. Kalam that is wajib, speech that is wajib on him, even if it is for the benefit of the salah, whether it is for the benefit of salah or not, whether salah is fard or nafil, whether what he said is a lot or little, there's no difference. There's no difference. In this case, his salah would be invalid. In this case, his salah would be invalid. Right? In this case, his salah would be invalid. So this which we're speaking about is when a person is actually in salah. The first one, mas'ala that we spoke about is when the salam done before the time and he spoke, and the speech that he said was not for the benefit of the salah. So then when we said, so now we spoke about when a person speaks in the salah. When a person speaks in the salah and the rule regarding it. We're going to touch on these things just now again. The next mas'ala they say is that when a person speaks, when he did salam before the end of salah, they say وَإِن تَكَلَّمَ مَنْ سَلَّمَ نَاسِيًا. If a person who did salam forgetfully in the wrong place, if he spoke in this case, if he spoke and what he said was for the benefit of the salah, and فَإِن كَثُرْ, and what he spoke also was not a lot. It was not a lot of things that he said, and not a lot of things that he said. That's why the fuqaha say you speak according to the need. You need to say certain things, then you only say that amount. You need to tell the imam that you pray 2 raka'at, You don't add anything onto it when there's not a need. Maybe the imam doesn't know how to correct his mistake, for example. So somebody who knows the fiqh can tell the imam, that's a need. But more extra, something else, you do not speak. You do not speak anything extra. So that's, you speak for the benefit of the salah, and it's not a lot that you say. And then the salah would not be invalid. The salah would not be invalid. This is opinion of many of the Hanbali fuqaha, including Ibn Qudama and many others. So that's the first opinion. And then they say that a person in this case, if he can fix the salah through an indication, or through saying something that is not kalam, that is not normal speech, then a person needs to do that, or he should do that. In fact, some of them say if he can fix the salah through an indication, and he spoke, then the salah would be invalid. So basically they are very strict in this case of speaking in salah. They are very strict with speaking in salah. So if a person then could tell the imam through, let's say, finger signs to show like a number of fingers, to say that you've prayed 3 instead of 4, something like that, and the imam would realize, then a person has to do that. Sometimes the imam might not realize what you're trying to indicate to him. Then you can speak. It just came to my head, if a person were to take his phone out and type to the imam, what would that count as? Based on what we said before, that would not count as speech. It would not count as speech. We spoke about an indication in salah, doesn't invalidate the salah. We spoke about somebody who is dumb, who speaks through sign languages. If the sign language is understood even, which is basically speech for this dumb person, it would count as movements in salah. So if a person took out his phone or a paper and wrote, the imam, you prayed 1 rak'ah short, for example, it would fall under movements. It would fall under movements, not speech. So the rules of movements would apply. But that's just to build fiqh. That if it were to happen, then that's how the fiqh would be. So they basically saying speaking. The second opinion in the madhab, in this case, Mardawi says, him and others, they say that even in this case, if you speak for the benefit of the salah, then the salah would be invalid. And they say, and this is also opinion of even in al-Muntaha from the main Hanbali books. The opinion I mentioned first was the opinion of al-Iqna'. But in Muntaha, they also say any speech in this case would invalidate the salah. And they say that this hadith of Dhul Yadayn, it happened before the prohibition of speaking in salah came. So they say this prohibition of speaking in salah, Zayd ibn Arqam, one of the ahadith in Bukhari and Muslim, or in Muslim, in fact it's in Bukhari and Muslim, Zayd ibn Arqam says that we used to speak to each other in salah until the verse وَقُومُوا لِلَّهِ قَانِتِينَ was revealed. And they said this verse indicated to us, it commanded us to be silent in salah and not to speak. So then here, but other of fuqaha say that's not accurate, because the hadith of Dhul Yadayn is narrated by Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, and he accepted Islam in the 7th year, in the year of Khaybar, around there. So then, and this hadith of speaking in salah, the hadith of Zayd ibn al-Arqam happened just before the hijrah or just after the hijrah. But on both cases, it happened before the incident of Dhul Yadayn. So that's the other opinion. That's the rebuttal from the other opinion. So that's opinion 2. Opinion 3 is that if a person speaks for the benefit of the salah, but forgetfully, sahwan, he did it without realizing, then the salah would not be invalid. This is the opinion of Majd ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi, Ibn Taymiyyah's grandfather, Sahib al-Muharrar. He says that the rule of not speaking in salah is general. It applies to everything, but when there's a need, if done forgetfully, then it's overlooked. He says the general trend is that you're not allowed to speak, and if it happened because of the forgetfulness, then that would be our only exception. The fourth opinion in this mas'ala is the opinion again of Shaykh Taqiyuddin Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi. He says in this case, where the person did the salam, before the time, and he spoke, just like what we mentioned just now, if speaking not for the benefit of the salah does not break the salah, so then obviously in this case it won't break the salah. It won't break the salah. So his opinion would link in both ways. But here he says that even if it is a lot of speech, because we said it must be a little. So he says even if it is a lot, you've spoken a lot, then you can still build on the salah. You can still build on the salah. Because it's in a case where you're not realizing that you are actually in salah. But in general, a person realizing he's in salah shouldn't speak extra. He should speak what he needs to, or indicate what he needs to get out of the difference of opinion, or say what he needs to, indicate what he needs to, and then he can build on the salah. Then he can build on the salah, but not extra. He shouldn't speak extra or speak unnecessary, because he would know, or the ma'moom, if he's ma'moom, or he knows that actually we are one rak'ah short, so we are in salah. It could be one exception that we're going to mention just now, is that if a person is ignorant of the rule, and he speaks, then that could be an exception. But as long as a person knows the rules, then he shouldn't try and do extra. He shouldn't speak if he can fix the salah without speaking. If he needs to speak, he should keep it to the limit, etc. Things like that. So basically, what we mentioned here, that's basically the three opinions. We're going to call it three, because Ibn Taymiyyah's opinion in the first mas'ala would obviously apply to this one. Hence, many of the fuqaha do not include it in this mas'ala. They mention these three. So Ibn Taymiyyah's the salah would not break in any of the cases, right? Because a person spoke in the salah, he spoke in the case where the salam is done, forgetfully, and he spoke not for the benefit of the salah. He didn't speak for the benefit of the salah would still be valid. The opinion or the mas'ala where a person speaks while he's actually in salah, if he spoke intentionally, the salah is obviously invalid. But if he spoke forgetfully, Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayhi, also here he says that a person, it's overlooked. So there it's overlooked. So now some of the fuqaha like al-Mardawi mentions that the fuqaha, many of them, they mention the mas'ala of speaking in salah, when you actually in salah, and when you speak forgetfully in the salah. Forgetfully in the salah. And when you do salam in the wrong place in salah. So one is you speak in salah while you actually in salah, and number two, you speak when you do the salam in the wrong place, with salah short. So he says many of the fuqaha put in the mas'ala of speaking in salah, you have the two opinions, intentional, unintentional. So you have the mas'ala of that salah breaks at all costs, and the second opinion is that if it's done by mistake, it's overlooked. And then in the mas'ala of speaking for the benefit of the salah, in the case where you do the salam, we mentioned those three opinions. So he says many of the fuqaha mention the mas'ala like that. But a few others, Ibn Taymiyyah's grandfather Majd and Ibn Aqil and a few others, they mentioned, or it's Qadi Iyad, not Ibn Aqil, one of them, they mention that the difference of opinion with regards to speaking in salah, when you speak for the benefit of salah. So basically it resembles our second mas'ala, meaning when you done salam in the wrong place, but you spoke for the benefit of the salah. These three opinions, they mention it also for the one who spoke while he's actually in salah. Meaning there's scope for speaking while you actually in salah, and you spoke for the benefit of the salah, and it was a little. There's scope for it even while you are actually in salah. And Mardawi himself, we may have not mentioned live on the recording al-Mardawi, what's his level in the Hanbali madhab, but I mentioned to some of the guys on who he is in the madhab. I mean, the mas'ala where the salah, where the speaking breaks in general, it's mentioned in his book At-Tanqih, and he's known as al-Munaqqih, the Munaqqih of the madhab. What he says is the madhab. Many of the fuqahas deem it as the actual madhab, despite the difference of opinions in certain cases. So Mardawi says that the correct way to go about this mas'ala in the madhab is the way Ibn Aqil and Majd Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullahi alayh, the grandfather of Shaykh al-Islam, they mention it. So to have three opinions also when you speak while you actually in salah. And they mention sometimes it's more needed to speak while you actually in salah. Like an imam, we mentioned the situation where he goes up for an extra rak'ah because he forgot Fatiha or something, and the people behind, those followers, don't know. They don't know. So in that case he could speak. And there would be scope for the salah to still be valid. Or the question was the other day about the imam got up for an extra rak'ah in tarawih, and then he's going to go back to sitting because he realizes the third rak'ah. How would he correct? There's so many people behind him, or what would he do? Then this is a case to speak. But there also you could do other dhikr, you could do other situations, other indications that would not invalidate the salah. A person could do those things we mentioned, and a few other things we mentioned connected to that. So these are the masail connected to speaking in salah in general. Then there's the few things we're going to touch on the difference of opinion of of a few other things. And we'll do that in the upcoming lesson, inshallah. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to teach us that which benefits us and to benefit us with that which He teaches us. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.